Welcome to Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. It's like coffee with an analyst, but there's no actual coffee. Each episode, we interviewed an expert in the field of law enforcement analysis to share their career-defining stories and to get their insights on the world. Please join us on recognizing and learning from these brilliant minds as we define the law enforcement analysis profession one episode at a time.
Thank you for joining me. I hope many aspects of your life are progressing. My name is Jason Elder, and today our guest has 16 years of law enforcement analysis experience. She's currently the president of the Florida Crime and Intelligence Analyst Association. She's also the chair of the Ethics Committee for the IACA. She's the former Elections Committee member for IACA and currently is the Senior Criminal Intelligence Analyst of Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. Please welcome Rhea-Lyn Gerstenkorn. Rhea, how we doing?
Hi, Jason. I'm well, thank you. How are you doing?
I am well. That name, I was struggling with it in my head. I was like, I don't want to mess it up, so I hope I did okay.
No, you pronounced it perfectly. So.
All right. So Rhea, is that a family name? How did you get the name Rhea?
So my dad wanted to actually name me Penelope, but my mom refused to have anybody call me Penny or throw pennies at me, stuff like that. So but what's really funny now is that I actually have a dog named Penny. So I feel like it's kind of like a little bit of irony in that whole thing. So they came to a compromise and they used the Oxford Unabridged Dictionary, somehow found what they decided to name me in there. And besides having like the Greek mythology, which I personally just love, I don't really know a lot about it, but I love that. There's also a moon on Saturn. There's the bird that looks like an ostrich. But basically, from what I can remember my dad telling me is that it's like that which comes forth from the earth and is refreshing or something like that. So it was just, my parents wanted a unique name, and that's that.
And that's RHEA.
Correct.
I do find the naming of children fascinating because my wife and I, when we were naming our children, one will throw out a name and we'll go, oh no, there was a girl in third grade that was named that and she was picked on or she was super annoying. So I don't want a child that's named that.
Yes, absolutely. And they did the same thing with my brother too. So his name is Bennett. They didn't want to common like Steve or something like that. Not that there's anything wrong with those names. And my dad was a junior, and they didn't want to make my brother a third. So they pictured like what a nameplate would look like if he was like the CEO of a business. So they came up with Bennett Todd.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there is a lot of pressure there. Like once you become like the third or fourth,
yeah,
and then you have a son. I mean, I can't imagine going to your family and saying, yeah, we're not going to make him the fifth or sixth, right?
We're changing it up.
We're going to do something different. So I don't know. Yes. Yeah. All right. So you begin your career as a police service specialist. I don't know what that is. Yeah. So what is that and how you got started?
Sure. So when I first started with that agency, Palm Beach Gardens, I was actually a records clerk. Worked the front desk, did data entry, sent arrest packets to the state attorney's office, stuff like that. About 6 months into my time there, we went to a different RMS system. It was a fully integrated one that was the RMS, the CAD system, the office, like the MFR officers would write their reports and their citations and everything like in the field. So it was all electronic. There was no more having to like hand type in narratives and stuff like that. Because that took away from a lot of the data entry, which is what the records clerks did, they came up with a way to reclassify us as a police service specialist and then add additional like responsibilities to what we did. And there was like 5 of us, I think, and we all had something different that we were going to like specialize in. One lady was UCR, one was doing parking tickets, one did validations. I got lucky, and I don't know how, but I got crime analysis. As low man on the totem pole, I didn't think I'd have a chance. I'm like, this sounds like the most interesting thing. Like, there's no way I'm going to get it. Nobody else wanted it. So that's how I got my first step into the doorway of crime analysis, and I've hopefully just been running with it ever since.
They make you the crime analyst, but are you doing that full time, or
No.
are you you're sharing duties between other services and then going to crime analysis, right? So what were your other duties?
We'd have to help at the front desk, public records requests. Twice a week we did fingerprints. So we would have to like collect the funds for that. Anybody who just came in for anything like around the PD as well, direct them if they needed to call dispatch. We would do, we had to do mail runs for the PD twice a day. a lot of like what you would expect like records to do, traffic accidents, citations, stuff like that. But I so wanted to do more analysis that I would always get my work done long before like the day's end, like usually before lunch, and I could just jump right back into crime analysis aspect of it.
What benefit did you get from being in records to holding this police services specialist that helped you be a good crime analyst?
Using the RMS system and seeing the reports that came in every day. So one of the things we ended up being responsible to do was also UCR check the report, like make sure that they were coded correctly. So that right there helped me learn what defines like the Part 1 crimes. And that made it easier to identify like if a criminal mischief was coded wrong or something like that. Being able to learn those things, the intricacies of the reports, being able to just really learn how to use the RMS and CAD system to pull the data, that just really made it so much simpler. Like I wasn't having to try to learn how to be an analyst and also trying to learn how to review reports or search reports. Like it was kind of like all one at one time. So it just kind of made it a little bit more fluid for me, I think.
And what was the RMS system?
Oh, so at the time it was OSSI, and they've been bought and merged like numerous times since then. I think they're Central Square now with like 3 other RMS companies.
Gotcha. Doing the data entry, I mean, I can understand where that would be a huge benefit, especially when you go over to a records management system and you realize what should be there, what was there historically, where do I find it in the system?
Yeah, I know everybody has their issues with different RMS systems, and I know some people think it's just build it in-house. I found this system to be so user-friendly in the sense of how you can search for your information, whether it's looking for specific reports or looking for specific people and seeing their involvement in history all on like one screen. Delray Beach ended up going to that system as well. And in my time there, we learned how to make it a little bit more like Intel-based for what we were trying to do there. So being able to transfer that knowledge over as well made a big difference too.
I mean, really, the records management system should free up analysts because other people in the department, officers, managers, detectives, should be able to get most of their reports and data from the RMS.
Correct.
And that frees up the analysts to work on bigger tasks.
Definitely.
So, and that leads us to your badge story, which is your career-defining case or project, earning your analyst badge, so to speak. And it's interesting because at this time, you're not a crime analyst.
Correct.
But you work on this case that earns you your analyst badge. So let's talk about that.
Okay, great. So one of the things I would do, I don't know if it was suggested to me or if I just started kind of doing it on my own. I can't remember that specific thing, but I would go through our RMS system and I would look at specifically stolen property, and anything that had a serial number, I would run through our county's pawn system. And if I found something, I would double check it, make sure it's correct, different things like that. And if there was something, I would pass it on to that detective or whoever needed it. So when I was doing that one day, I came across a PlayStation that had been pawned and rebought and pawned and rebought, and like it had gone back and forth like several times. So I gave it to our TAC unit because it just came in as like a theft. It wasn't a burglary. Like roommates thought that somebody stole it from them. So I gave it to our TAC unit, which was the crime prevention, like proactive team. So I gave it to them and never really heard anything back from it. All of a sudden, like 5-6 months later, my supervisor pulls me into the office and she's like, "You're not going to believe this." And I was like, "What's that?" She's like, "Remember that PlayStation that you found pawned?" I was like, "Yeah, what about it?" She's like, "You don't understand what Pandora's box you just opened." I was like, okay, like I'm like, oh, am I in trouble? Like I hate being pulled into anybody's office for a talk because I always feel like it's just never going to be a good thing.
I do.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's my personality is always just like, what did I do? Like, what are you mad at me about? Not, look what this amazing thing you did. Yes. So she tells me that they've been working on it for the last 6 months, following up on it and, doing their investigations. And it comes to find out that the house that it was stolen from is a rehab house, drug addicts, that type of thing. South Florida it's calmed down a lot, but South Florida was a huge hub for addicts to come down to for treatment. This was one particular house in this area. And once they started finding and talking to people, whatever, it turns out to be this massive pill trafficking ring, Xanax and Oxys. So we're still at the height of like the pill mills and the doctor shopping and stuff like that. Like my mind was like blown away. It really was, because I had no idea that a simple like PlayStation would turn into, this large complex trafficking ring. So they bring me up to speed and they let me go on the search warrant for the main target's house. The husband and wife, they're both major addicts. I get to go there as other teams are out that day sweeping up the rest of the group. Because at this point they have everybody they've identified, they're going out to bring them all in. So they coordinated it with the sheriff's office, with other local agencies to have enough people to just pull them up one morning. So I'm at the house. It's absolutely disgusting and like giant dust balls like all over the place. I think I was like helping to catalog, but they were looking for whatever they could find. And I just thought that was so cool. I'm like, I'm out here, I'm doing that. Like, this is so neat. Like, because I find what officers do very, very interesting. I just don't have that personality. Like, sure. I don't want to be in a confrontation. That's just not something I can do. But this,
it's not for everyone. It's definitely not for everyone.
Absolutely not. And I don't want to be that like female cop that everybody makes fun of because she can't do her job. So she has to hide somewhere. So I was in cloud nine. I'm like, this is the most awesome thing ever. Like, I was like, oh, I can't wait to do this again. The husband and wife, they're arrested. The husband had already been booked. He'd been in, I think, for like a week, and he had to like majorly detox. I think they said his pill habit was like 25 Xanaxes a day.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was a lot. And they weren't even sure he was going to make it through withdrawal at the jail. But he did. He talked to one of the detectives who pretty much worked all the violent crimes and homicides and gave him like a little bit of information right off the bat and was basically like, remember this robbery homicide that happened a few years ago? You guys were on the right track. Like, the gun you were looking for when you went to that person's house was on top of the refrigerator. And he was just like blown away. He's like, what are you talking about? 2 years prior to that, we had a home invasion, robbery, and homicide. 2 masked men broke into this apartment where there was 4 adults. They were specifically looking for drugs. They went right to a particular bedroom, looked for this locked case. I think he had just re-upped and had like 700 pills. So they take those, and I can't remember if it was that particular, like that guy whose pills they were taking, tried to stop them because his dad was there too. And I think they had already like cold cocked his dad. So one of them gets like in their face and they pull the trigger. He's dead because they were masked. Like, nobody knew, they didn't know who they were, but everybody had a feeling, like everybody at the PD had a feeling like you had to know who it was. Like, they specifically went to your apartment right after you re-upped and knew exactly where to go to find it. So I don't know if they were just really scared because this is what they did and they just didn't want to say it. Well, like 13 people got arrested for this drug trafficking ring that was like the biggest at the time for that area in the county. They were able to narrow down a specific suspect who at that point, I believe, was already in jail for another drug-related homicide. He had killed an Army or Navy veteran for his pills. He had actually broken into another woman's house in a city just a little south of us, beat her up really bad to steal her pills. And they were able to talk to him, and he actually confessed to his involvement in that homicide. It was him and his brother.
I'm not following how the PlayStation fits into all this yet.
Right.
So, and I know you said it, but I'm still lost in that respect of how the PlayStation fits into all this.
So the PlayStation was taken by residents of that sober home, and they were pawning it. I don't know that we knew that there were sober homes in Palm Beach Gardens. Gardens is more of a upper middle class area. The Williams sisters have a house in Gardens. I mean, it's a great area, if you want to live there, but you don't really think you're going to have a drug house or a treatment house like in your neighborhood. So I don't think that was one known about. And then 2, the people that were in that house were part of that ring, and they led to other addicts who were part of the ring, and it just kept snowballing. So finding that one PlayStation in a pawn system led them to that person, that house, that information that led to bringing down this like massive drug trafficking ring that led to an arrest and closure of a home invasion, robbery, homicide.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I got you. All right. When you're entering the pawn information, did you guys have your own system, or were you using, I know there's third-party services for pawn information. What were you using?
So the county at that point had their own built out system. So I was using that. Now it is a third party, and I think they're about to change it again. I stay out of all that. Just give me a log on and let me go. But at that point, it was an in-house built system from the sheriff's office. and you would just log in and you could search different ways. I liked serial numbers because it was a lot easier as opposed to looking for a PlayStation, a diamond ring, things like that. So that's what I would do. And I would take it from our RMS, and I have to give the officer credit, one, for actually capturing the serial number, and then two, the person who was reporting it stolen actually having that information. I definitely don't have my serial numbers written down like I should.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I don't think. And so that's multi-million dollars and solving. It was just one homicide there?
Yeah, it was just that one, but it had gone cold for like 2 years. So it was still an open homicide. It was considered very violent for that area. So being able to bring closure to those people, like the victims, and then just being able to wrap that up, I was just shocked. And that's what I tell people, new analysts, or if I go and I talk to a class, I talk about this story, because I'm like, you don't know where that one puzzle piece is going to lead to. I had no clue. So to find out how all that just works out, that's just the amazing part of this job.
So this is 2008. This earns you the Civilian of the Year.
Yes. Palm Beach County, I think it was.
Yeah. So for the whole county.
Mm-hmm.
So
that whole year.
That's impressive.
I was very grateful and very blessed, I think, to be able to be a part of that.
Yeah, it is interesting to go out in the field with the officers, and especially when you've been working a case for a long time, and it's very fulfilling once you've been working behind the desk on a particular case for a long time.
And it really kind of opened my eyes up to the pill mill problem. You can read all the stories in the news and you can see all the stories, but when you're not really in the mix of it, because that's not my issue, you don't really fully get the grasp of it. So when they started bringing these people in after the arrest, I'm looking at them and they look like zombies. And one girl had just had brain surgery the week before, and she was about to fall out. And one girl was 8 months pregnant. It's just insane what these people were willing to do to get some extra money or extra pills, and they're just walking zombies. It was really sad. My heart really broke.
So you eventually get a crime analysis job, right?
Yes.
You eventually go to Delray Beach Police Department in 2010.
Yes. Correct.
So then is it similar work that's what you were doing before, or has now the duties changed?
The responsibilities are completely changed. I am now a dedicated crime analyst. That is my job.
All right.
Just do it. So I'm cool. This is what I want. And I was so super excited. I could not wait. So there was still some data entry, because when I started there, we had a lot of disparate systems. You would have to go look at different places for different things, and hopefully your information would match up. And if not, well, good luck to you. And I think a year and a half later is when we got the same RMS CAD mobile field reporting system that I was familiar with at Palm Beach Gardens. And I feel like that's a game changer.
Oh, that's good.
It was just so much easier to extract data. The other way was just so hard.
Now, was there still a learning curve for you? There was something that surprised you as you're getting acclimated to being the crime analyst at Delray?
I think I was just so excited that probably everything was new, or just maybe more broadened, I guess, from the little bit I was doing at Gardens. Nothing really changed dramatically. It wasn't my coworker, her name was Patina Clemens. She's now the supervisor over the analyst in Arlington Police Department in Texas. I don't feel like there was anything that she told me or showed me for the general skill set of this is what an analyst does that was mind blowing. She did teach me something really cool for a geo forecast that I had never done before, and super simple to do. So that was one thing she taught me, I think later, maybe a year later, because it happened to work out that we had a crime series that it would fit with.
Can you describe that, or does that not work for radio?
No. I mean, no, it's fine. You take, okay, how am I going to explain this? So we used the split time method for figuring out times and averages and standard deviations. I know some in the field think heuristic analysis is the way to go. I don't know either way. I know split time has worked for me and we've been successful with it. So I kind of stick with that because I've been able to see that. I haven't seen heuristic yet. But you basically map it out on Esri. And you take a piece of graph paper and you print that map out on graph paper. So then you create your X coordinate and your Y coordinate, and however you want to do it. I did it like every dash was like 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, both across and up. So then I would go through, I would find each dot, match it up to that specific incident, and I would, to my very best ability, say, okay, for the X across is 35 and Y is 40. And then keep doing that for all the incidents. And then when you get finished with it, you find your average for X, your standard deviation for X, your average for Y, your standard deviation for Y. You find that like basic perimeter around those areas, and that's your geo forecast.
And these are crimes that
are connected.
I got you. And is it any types of crime, or does it work for one crime over the other?
So we used it for a business burglary series, and that worked out well. And then we also used it for a occupied overnight cat burglary series that we were having, as well as the neighboring city to the north. They're the ones that actually told us about the problem. We didn't realize it yet. So when we went to go back and look at it, I think that was the one she showed me how to do that. And we were able to come up with that specific location. We also did a temporal forecast, daytime, stuff like that. And they ended up catching the guy right smack in that middle of our forecast area.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
It was good.
Anyway,
yeah.
What makes it split?
Like split time?
Yeah.
Okay, so split time is like that halfway point between when the last time you knew something was secure and when you found.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I got you. So if it's, left the house at 8 a.m., came back at 4 p.m., noon is the split, the middle.
Correct.
I got you.
Yes.
All right.
And a lot of people don't like that method, and I can understand why, but I've had success with it. So I keep working with it, and I'm one of those visual people in learning, so I can read all about heuristic and how it's supposed to work and blah, blah, blah. But until I actually see somebody or have somebody show me in front of me how to do it, I struggle with the conceptualization of it.
Yeah, I think I did a little bit of the heuristic back in my time. I sound like an old man elder here. But it is fascinating because you basically map out all the hours. You take, and this is probably going to be hard for radio, so to speak, but you take all your different times and then you put an X for every hour. So if it is 8 to 4, you have 8 X's. If it's 8 to 12, you have 4 and all this other stuff. And so you go through all of them and then you add up each hour. And then whichever one has the most hours in common, that's when most of the time it's overlapping.
Gotcha.
So that's in a nutshell what heuristic is.
I know it's in the 3rd edition Crime Analysis book from IACA.
Yes. So this also, you get in a couple of years under your belt here, and then you get yourself involved in another multi-million-dollar case.
Yes.
So let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So the sergeant we were working for has a really analytical brain, and it was so much fun working with him through the years because I feel like I got to learn a lot from him. And he was very, at least with me, he was very willing to teach me different things. So having that cop perspective, but him also understanding the analyst perspective and not being threatened by it, but embracing it, I feel like really just made life so much simpler there as far as having people buy into it. So he had found a report regarding counterfeit bills being passed. We put out a bulletin, here's the guy we're looking for, here's the guy who passed it. And it was not a ghosted, blurry, pixelated photo. You could clearly make out who it was. It was just a matter of identifying him. With the system that we had, the RMS system we had, agencies that participate in have the option to also share data. So they can also share their RMS, certain reports, things like that through a intranet database. So I would take the serial numbers that we did have, because there was the same 2 or 3 serial numbers, and I would look them up in that, it was peer-to-peer sharing is what they called it, P2P. And I would see has anybody else had this? And I was finding other agencies in our county that were reporting the same thing, passing bills, stuff like that. So I was pulling those reports, I was contacting those agencies and analysts, seeing if I can get, what I can get from them, what do they have, pictures, whatever. So pretty much every time, at least in Florida, every time you get a counterfeit bill, you contact the Secret Service. And it's up to them whether or not they're going to come out and collect the bill or they're just going to ignore it. So I think this particular bill was already on their radar, or one particular serial number was already on their radar because they had a problem with it a few years prior. And they actually had an indictment, but then some of the cooperating witnesses, like, I guess, kind of told the people what was up, and it all like shut down for a few years. So the Secret Service gets involved and they're gung-ho about working with us and how can we make this all happen. And I'm like, whoa, this is cool. I've never worked with, a federal agency before. So let's see how this goes. Because you hear all the horror stories about how they don't like to work with you. And that was definitely not my experience. I think the biggest hurdle we had was that this was, I think, the start of like 2011, 2012, election year. We would lose our investigators for protection duties.
I see.
So just because you're assigned to Secret Service doesn't mean you just do protection stuff. But if there's something like the presidential elections, they're all basically getting yanked to go do that, which makes sense. So it kind of like would hamper what we were trying to do. But the guys I worked with just really focused in on the known suspects that we had in our city. The FBI has some really amazing technology that was able to tell us some specific information that we needed. And we were able to identify who most likely was printing the bills, but they were washing them. They were taking like ones and washing them and turning them into, I think, 5s and 10s or 10s and 20s. Like they weren't going crazy with like $100 bills or stuff like that. They were keeping it small.
What did you get from the FBI?
They were able to tell what printer the bills were printed on. Like the printer down to the serial number to where it was like sold. Like it was like the craziest thing. I don't have that information with me, unfortunately, but I just remember being like blown away that's even possible. So it was able to be tracked back to somebody who was already suspected of washing the bills before, like this in the years before. So our problem was now trying to find him. He would still use a Delray Beach address or a Boynton Beach address, and he hadn't lived there for years. We would do the aggregate searches through Clear and Accurant and TLO and stuff like that, and just trying to find something, running him in our DMV system. Does he have an updated address? Like who, where, what could it be? And we kept striking out. We just couldn't find him. We did find a marriage certificate. I think I found a female associated with him. And when I looked her up, somehow I found a marriage certificate, and I was like, well, here's his wife. Let's see how this can help. So we just kept looking, kept digging, and I came across an address one day, and I was like, hey, try this one. I don't think we've gone here. And it was an apartment building, and I'm like, this may be one of the vehicles that is there, check it out and see. They go there, they find it, it's that building. Like we now have his address. So they coordinate with the Secret Service and all this stuff, and they end up getting the warrant, and they bust in the house or the apartment. They arrest him, they arrest her. The printer's there, the plates are there, everything is there. The guy was just I think him and his wife were just really good artists. Like they were just really like talented, and this is where they decided to put their skills to use. I had to go to the proffer of one of the suspects because the sergeant I was working with couldn't go. He was out of town. So he got permission for me to go with the Secret Service agents. So that was neat. I had never been to a proffer. I didn't know what that was. So sitting there with the guy who, thinks of himself as King Kong, almost in tears because of this, was kind of funny.
So what did you learn about going to the proffer?
So he told us that the subject we thought was printing was responsible for the printing. He's been doing it. I think they use this. I can't remember if they got with him directly to buy and like trade off the monies for it, or if there was a middleman, because there was somebody else. And I just don't think we ever got enough probable cause to arrest him, but we knew he was somehow involved in it. And he told us how he was selling the bills, and he gave us some of the people he was selling the bills to. There was nothing that was like earth-shattering, like we didn't already know this, but it was still just really interesting to hear somebody who, thinks of himself as like a hardened thug, basically like spilling his guts so that he doesn't go to prison again.
So he's selling them. I think that's interesting. So they're not using them themselves. They're selling them to other people to then use.
It was both for sure. So I think they would sell them for like 50 cents to the dollar or something like that. And so it was a profit regardless for both sides. he was using them to facilitate his luxury-based lifestyle that he couldn't really afford if he wasn't doing this. So it was a lot of a facade to just put up that front. And I think one to like convince his wife that he's on the up and up. And no.
So they're taking ones and they're basically whitening them out, right?
Yeah.
They're bleaching them out and then they're printing the $5 or $10 on them. You mentioned that they're artists. So is there a hand drawing aspect to this in terms of artists?
So I didn't get to see the actual plates or like the evidence that they see. I think the Secret Service took all that with them. But from what I understood, that there were like plates. So in my head, I'm thinking of like those plates from when I was a kid and you put like a piece of paper over it and like you trace and draw, those types of things. So, but I believe they created them themselves. They carved out these plates and they got it to where the bills passed for what they are. Now, it wasn't passing those extra security marks or checks, like where you use the marker, and it didn't have, there was a couple other things that they didn't have, but they also were still able to include certain ones. So it just depended on how like specific people were with like checking things.
Yeah, because I when you said artist, I was like, how long are they taking to change like a $1 bill to a $5 bill? That doesn't seem like a good use of time to me.
No, not at all. But again, that was their whole job. So they got time, they got nothing else to do. But from what I understood, it was they used plates that they had created as artists, and they would use those plates to then reprint whatever denomination they were working on.
Good. So did you get an award for that one?
I got a recognition from the Secret Service.
Oh, that's good.
Trust me, I was like looking for that. But I mean, we worked really well together. There was no like ego that you typically hear about when trying to work with federal agencies. They were gung-ho about working this. We were gung-ho about working this, and we were all gung-ho about working together. The agents that I did get to work with, great people. I really enjoyed, again, not somebody who's like threatened because an analyst is helping out.
Especially local civilian analysts.
Yeah, right. Like they didn't bother them at all. They were like, cool, what else have you found? Like, let's just get it all going. And I was like, all right, let's do this. So.
All right, great collaboration. Good story.
Oh yeah. It was definitely a good experience.
All right, so let's take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about your current position, and I also want to talk about your volunteer work with different associations.
Okay.
This is Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. We'll be right back. Hi, this is Jason Elder and Mindy Hune from LEA Podcasts. Mindy, how many people voted in last year's IACA election?
Probably around 10 to 11%.
Wow, is that normal?
It's the unfortunate trend.
Wow. What can we do to wreck that trend?
I think we should start by recommending to 10 of our friends, members with the association, and ask them to recommend to 10 of their friends to start voting and getting involved, and we'll go from there.
That sounds like a pyramid scheme.
It is. But it's a good pyramid scheme. It's for a good cause.
All right, so we're going to reach out to 10 friends of ours that are members of the IACA, encourage them to vote, and then ask them to reach out to 10 of their friends to do the same. We're going to recommend 10, and this is going to wreck the trend.
Exactly.
All right, so how do you vote?
You can vote on the IACA website at iaca.net/IACA-election-page.
But I think I already voted in September.
During September, it was just the nomination phase. Now that we're in October, the entire month of October is actually the voting phase. So if you only voted in September, go again to vote, because the vote in September does not transfer over to October.
Well, what if I don't know the candidates?
On that voting page, you can find information on both our candidates. You can find more information on them via the IACA website, the forums, or if you're fans of Analyst Talk with Jason Elder, you can find information on them on leapodcast.com with an S.
Well, what about those that think that their vote doesn't matter?
It does matter, and if we looked at last year's, it was very close. That one vote could have made a difference. We're all in this association together. It's important that we have a voice in choosing our next leader. And if you have been a fan of our podcast, a lot of our guests have mentioned that IACA is like a second family. And when you're a part of the family, like, you're important. Your voice needs to be heard. So please vote.
All right. So you heard it. Rec 10, wreck the trend. So reach out to 10 of your friends, IACA members. You probably haven't talked to them all year anyway. Reach out to them, encourage them to vote, and let's wreck this trend. Thank you. Welcome back. Before the break, Rhea was talking about her multi-million-dollar cases. So we didn't get a chance to talk about your current position. You recently switched up from Del Rey as a crime analyst to switching to a senior criminal intelligence analyst with Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office.
Yep.
So that's after 10 years. It's also March, right before COVID began. So why after 10 years did you make this switch?
You know, like when you just get hit with signs that it's time to move on to something else, I was just getting like beat with signs to move to the next opportunity. So the sheriff's office posted a position for a senior criminal intelligence analyst. And I was like, well, you know what? Let's see what happens. So I put in for it. I interviewed, thankfully passed all the background stuff because that stuff stresses me out to no end. And I started there March 12th. By March 18th, we were told we were working from home until further notice. Wow. So I've been trying to learn a new position basically from home. So
I gotcha. And are you still at home now?
Yes. I work from home 4 days a week and I go into the office 1 day a week right now. It's different for each analyst there. It's different for each unit there. My particular unit, this is how we're working it.
I gotcha. So you're more into intelligence analysis, right? So just for the listeners, kind of compare and contrast what you were doing to what you're doing now.
Right now, my position, I'm assigned to corrections. I do analysis for our jail and our inmates. One of the reasons I was brought on board was to make it more analytical and find ways to make it more tactical while trying to learn this job and the nuances of it. And corrections is a whole new side of law enforcement to me. So where I'm very comfortable with the LE side, there's things in corrections that I never knew anything about. I still don't know a lot about it. So I'm trying to work my way through those different concepts and how things work and try to learn that, but also trying to make connections. So one thing I'm working on right now is identifying the gang members in jail. It's not really a thorough process how it's been done, and we know we're missing a lot. So I've been working with the sergeant for their strategic threat intelligence unit, and we're trying to figure out ways to, one, make sure we get people identified, make sure their flags are in the system so that everybody knows, and see what we can do about showing those connections. Are they part of any particular problem in certain housing units? We're trying to identify what we don't know right now.
Are you doing anything with the mail correspondence going back and forth with the inmates?
So not right now. From what I've been able to gather, what corrections did before was just a lot of like info pushing and requests from the public record requests or from the corrections side command staff. So there's a lot of that was going on, and I'm trying to not necessarily get so involved in all that and create those like analytical processes that can really just move us forward too. Being able to listen to jail calls, helping the jail detectives with their investigations, the mail stuff, like however that ends up working out. Seems like we kind of get skipped and information goes to other analysts and other units to do stuff with, but not corrections. So trying to get that straightened out.
I used to do some of the work with the correspondents in the jails, and sometimes they would be speaking in code. So sometimes they would send the message separate and then send the key in another envelope.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, they would put both the message and the key in the same envelope.
Oh, that makes it so much easier.
Which made it easier on us, right? So,
well, I mean, they don't want to wait the week for them to get the next piece of mail. So that message was clearly very important.
Yes, it was interesting. It was
I bet.
Stuff you see on TV kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So then that's really difficult trying to learn this new job right with COVID, going from home, a job that normally was in the office, working hand in hand with everybody. And now you're the new person, don't really have a lot of rapport with everybody, and you're trying to do this.
Yes. Okay. It's been interesting. I don't recommend starting a new job in a pandemic. I don't, but it's how it worked out for me. And I'm excited about the opportunities. It is what it is. You got to make the most of it. So I'm trying to make the most of it.
There's a couple of things I want to get into next because you're certified with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
Yes.
They have a certification. For those that are unaware with the program, just go over the program a little bit and what's all involved with the certification.
So I know the program has gone under several reviews and changes since I went through it back in 2007. But basically what it was you had 2 prereq courses that were a week long that you had to take. One was basic analysis skills, making sure you knew what you were supposed to do. And the other one was the computer apps class. So making sure you could use Excel and PowerPoint and Word. They really didn't touch on access at that point. And then once you completed those 2 courses, you had to apply to get into the program. At that point, it was getting really popular, but there really wasn't a wait list. From what I understand, there's a wait list now. So the Florida Department of Law Enforcement oversees the Analyst Academy. It's funded through DHS, as far as I understand it. So there's no cost to the agencies here in Florida to have you go to the training. They're just responsible for, your housing or your lodging and per diem or whatever, if that's what your agency chooses. But basically, when I went, it was a 6-week course over the course of 6 months. And then you had to do an assessment on like a crime problem in your area. Some people had really interesting ones. Mine was not, because
you didn't have a multi-million-dollar case just laying around that you could just pull off the shelf?
No. Unfortunately, at that point, that hadn't even come to fruition yet. I didn't know about that point. So we picked like juvenile crimes. There was really nothing to pick in Palm Beach Gardens, which again, great for the people who live there, sucks if you're trying to do something. So we picked a juvenile crime and I wasn't happy with it, but it was something to like show. Okay, so fine, whatever. So you turn in your assessment like week 5. I think you also have a big group project that whole week. That was fun. So we got to work with different people that were in our class. Because before it was like maybe you worked on homework with each other, maybe you studied with each other, but you really didn't work together. And then week 6, you had your presentation, and the presentation had to be 15 to 20 minutes long. And you had to have like the PowerPoint, and you had to talk. And oh my goodness. This was awful for me. Like I was so happy the number I drew had me go day 1. Like I wish I could have gone in the morning, but I was happy with day 1. Like I just wanted to get it over and done with, because I am not a fan of public speaking at all, at all. So I think that was the first 2 days, and then you had a final, and then you had your graduation. That was it, and you were just happy to be done. But it was a good experience.
So it's 6 weeks over 6 months. So that's 1 week a month?
Yes.
Is this just for Florida analysts, or is this for anybody in the country?
So my understanding, and like I said, things have changed in the years since I've gone, is that it was just for Florida analysts, but there's a possibility, and you can look on FDLE's website if you're interested for more info, but I thought at one point they were allowing other states to go as long as those agencies paid their full way. I don't think they got like the free tuition or anything like that. I believe that agency had to pay for everything because it was grant funded. And I don't know if that's still the same, but I'm sure there's more information on FDLE's website. Otherwise, the program coordinator, Alexander Goldie, has additional information.
Yeah, that's got to be expensive, though. I mean, if you're talking about tuition and then per diem and then travel, room and board kind of thing.
I guess it would just depend on how much the cost of the class would be. Like, because I've never seen what it is. So, I don't know if it's $500 for all 6 weeks, or if $1,000, or if it's $250. It's, who knows? But yes, it could be expensive. But if you feel that it's going to be beneficial to your analyst, to your agency, might be worth the cost.
With Florida, you're currently president of the Florida Crime and Intelligence Analyst Association. So
it's a mouthful, isn't it?
Yes, it is. What's the word? Is there a nice little abbreviation or a word that you guys use?
Yeah, we use FCIAA.
So what are you guys doing good down there?
So we actually just launched a book club, the Strive Book Club by FCIAA. It's going to be all virtual. We're using Facebook, and then we're going to use Zoom to have like a end of book discussion, really geared for like personal professional development, but we'll throw in fun books there as well, because you don't always want to be bored. You want to have a fun book. So it's open to our members. It's open to non-members. Basically, all of the discussions are going to be through our Facebook group page that's private. our goal is to do 4 books a year. So we're getting ready to kick off our first book in the next few weeks.
And what's the book?
We have a poll going right now. So people can still vote, which is why we haven't come up with it yet. But right now, one of the books by Simon Sinek is in the lead.
So these are more leadership courses or self-improvement type books? Yeah,
like professional, personal development, leadership. As a professional organization, we could just read about, like the Cat in the Hat, or not the Cat in the Hat, but you know what I'm saying? Like we could just do fun books, but I'm trying to make it beneficial as well, especially since nobody can really go anywhere for training. Analysts usually don't have a big training budget to start with. So making this really affordable and inexpensive, and just an opportunity to kind of do something different. I don't know if any other association has a book club. So we thought this might be something fun to do. And so far we've had a lot of interest. So I'm actually really excited and really shocked as well.
I had Mitri Lewis on the show a month or so ago, and she talked highly about what she called the youngins coming up and taking over the association. So she spoke very highly of the current board.
Yeah, I can't thank the other board members and our volunteers enough, because such a group effort, and I have such great people can I name them all?
Sure, if you know them all.
I do. Let me give them all a shout out because they all deserve it. Our Vice President of Training, Donna Sita, she has such a gift of putting together trainings and great conferences. April Lee is our Vice President of Membership. She has to keep all of our people in line and organized. Kelly Morrow is our secretary, and she does a great job of maintaining our social media and getting stuff out there. Carly Seymour is our new treasurer, and I just love the energy and ideas that she brings to the table. Tommy Smith is our tech director, and he literally has saved our lives from everything web-based, because none of us do that. But he got our website back up and running. We had all the tech stuff behind the scenes. He never says no. If I ask him to do something, he says yes. And I always appreciate that about him. And then Erica McKinnon was our previous Vice President of Training, but she's now our shop director, and she's also on our training conference committee. And I mean, she was a huge part of our renaissance, which is what I call it. From 2016 to now, we just had a massive renaissance within our association.
Do you have to be from Florida? Do you have to work in Florida to be part of the association, or do you take neighboring states as well?
We take neighboring states as well. We have, I think, a couple members from South Carolina, a couple from Georgia, and we have one in the Caribbean. I can't remember which island, maybe St. Thomas, but I'm not 100% sure. But if our neighboring states don't have an association, why should they be left out? Yes, IACA, yes, IALEA, both beneficial. But if you're looking for those smaller networking opportunities and people you probably are going to contact for help, why not? Why not allow them?
And I find it fascinating. There's just certain states that analysis has really taken off, and they have their own association.
Yeah.
The Californias, the Floridas, the Arizonas, Colorados, Massachusetts, all have pretty strong local associations. So good for you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
All right. Well, speaking of IALEA, you were on the elections committee for IALEA. And as I was telling you in the prep meeting, I think you're the first person that I know that has held a committee position in both IALEA and IACA. Now, I'm sure there's somebody out there that's screaming and say, what about me? But to my knowledge right now, I have not come across somebody that held positions in both, at least a committee position in both.
Yeah.
For IALEA, the election committee, how was your experience of being part of that committee? What did you get out of that?
So I think I was on the board with FCIAA, but that was my first committee position on a different association. So it was really just kind of learning what their expectations were. It was a really good learning experience. At the end, we were able to provide suggestions or feedback on what worked, what didn't work. And one of the things that I didn't particularly care for was that people who were running, their nominations were too long. We had to cut it down. I didn't like that.
What do you mean by that?
If the requirements are to your nomination can only be 1 page or 500 words, and somebody's was a page and a half and 750 words, we had to cut out 250 words. I didn't like that. Like, I don't know these people, one. And then two, how am I supposed to pick out for them what is the most important or not important, or what they'll be okay with just not having in there? I didn't like that at all, even though we had to do it. And that was one of the things my suggestion was to, if they don't meet the requirements, make them clean it up themselves, because they know themselves the best. Like, they know what they want to get across.
No, that should definitely go back to the writer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if that's suggestion they enacted, but it was well received from our committee chairperson.
Sure. And IACA has a lot of elected positions, right? Do they all get elected at the same time, or is it staggered like IACA?
If I recall correctly, it is all staggered. And I think it may even have have like 3 different, like, it's not like how IACA has the 2, like the 2 different, I don't want to call them tiers, but the 2 different cycles. IACA might have 3 cycles. I'm not 100% sure on that.
And then, speaking of IACA, you're currently the ethics chair.
Yes.
And I feel that the ethics chair is the Dr. Fossey of the association. It's one of those things you don't want to know that they exist. If we're hearing from you, that means something's wrong.
Good. Yes. Yeah. We're like, you don't want to hear from us at all. And like, not hearing from us is all good stuff, right? But yeah, it's been interesting for sure. Here's how I think about things. If I'm a member of an association, I'm a part of that association. Like, I feel like I have a responsibility to get involved. So they put out like several calls for volunteers, and I had put my application in before. I'm like, sorry, we don't have any spots right now. Okay, fine, that's fine. Like, glad you have more than enough. And then in 2019, I think it was from like when I had put in like 6 months prior to that, maybe a little less, Christopher Bruce contacted me and asked if I would, 1, be on the committee, and then 2, if I would be the chair. And I was like, well, okay. Like, I mean, what do I got to do? Because I haven't been on a committee for them, but 2, I've certainly never run a committee. I was a little concerned just to be able to do it and do it correctly, but it hasn't been a problem. So.
Now, do they elect new members every year, or how does that work?
So how it's worked on mine, and I'm going to assume it's kind of the same across the board for all the other committees, because IACA has a ton of committees, because they're so big and they just have so much stuff going on. For us, they selected like 4 or 5 other individuals to see if they wanted to be on it. And then I had to like double check with them and see, and couple people like faded away, didn't respond. So it kind of just came down to like me and 3 other ladies who are also international. One girl is over in Europe, and I think the other 2, I think one is in the Caribbean as well, and I'm not sure where the 3rd one's from. But it ended up just being us. Kristen Lotman is our board liaison, so she has me tuck in with them every now and then just to make sure they're still on board, that they still want to participate and stuff like that, because we're not ones that like communicate a lot. We're not the training committee, we're not the election committee, so we don't really have that like constant communication. But it's been a really interesting experience for the whole time I've been on here. Like, thankfully we've only had 1 investigation that came through, and it didn't go anywhere.
Is that public knowledge who's on the board, or is that something that they try to keep secret?
That I'm not sure. So I know that if you went to the ethics committee, like the drop down on their page, I think my information is there as the chair. I don't know that the other members are on there, but there's a committee charter that has all of our names. So I don't know that it's secret, but I don't know how like public the information is either. But like for like the training committee, they'll like, if they put something together or whatever, you'll see all the committee members. I've seen Kyle like put them out, like somebody put them out, or the elections committee will list like who the chair is and like those, the additional people on their committee. I haven't done that because I don't really send out emails to IACA. So,
So you had mentioned the one case that you worked on, and then now it's completed. Now, is that open knowledge to the members, or what can be released and not released in terms of the membership?
Because it didn't go anywhere, I don't think much at all can be released. There's a process and procedures that have to be followed if you want to file an ethics complaint. And one of them is it can't be anonymous. If you, Jason, wanted to file a complaint against me, Rhea, you have to be able to identify it's you. So that's one thing. And then two, it has to be against like an actual member or somebody who has specific ties to IACA. It can't be like a personal vendetta. It can't be, that has nothing to do with the association at all. It can't be. So the one particular one we got was anonymous. I couldn't trace it back to the person. And I double checked with IACA's tech guy, Manny, just to make sure that it didn't get masked on my end, that, there's something I'm missing. And that's how they sent it in. So right there, I knew it was going to be pretty much dead in the water. But I took the opportunity to let's go through the process with the members. Like, let's see, like I see that, but let me see what they see. So we worked through the process and we talked about some things and we all finally came to the same conclusion. And then I reported back to the board what the issue and what the findings were. And that was that.
So was that just an email sent, or is there a form you fill out on the website?
No, there's no form. I think it's ethics@iaca.net, that's supposed to come to me. So there was an issue with the emails at that time that it just kind of got stuck there for a bit and I didn't know about it, but that got fixed. And because we also have a time limit of like how long we really have and we need to ask for more time so that it doesn't drag out. Because it was anonymous, because I couldn't go back to that person, that they're an IACA member or that they have significant ties to IACA through like business partnership or something like that. Like I couldn't go back to that person. They give the accusee the opportunity to kind of like know who's giving them, like who's accusing them of something with, and be able to fight it or challenge it. I see both sides. I see wanting to be anonymous, but I see how, because it's supposed to be specific to the association, it can't be. And if you're concerned, then let's talk about it and let's find a way to best protect you, how we can, if you're concerned about retribution or retaliation.
Can someone outside the organization file a grievance?
If they have significant ties to the association, yes, but we have to be able to vet and verify that. So it can't be
just a random person on the street.
Exactly. Like if you wanted to file a complaint, but you didn't want it to be known, so you go to the guy down at the grocery store and ask him to file a complaint for you. Like, no, like that's not going to work. But as long as they have significant ties to the association, then yes.
Just to walk this through the process for the listeners, a complaint gets filed. You have, did you say how long you had? Is it 60 days that you have or something? You have a period of time that you have to respond back to. Then you contact the person that is being accused or who the ethics complaint is against. And then you make recommendations to the board and the board chooses the actual punishment, whatever it is. And then do you know what are some examples of punishments?
They can suspend your membership. They can completely like just eliminate your membership. That's not the right word I'm looking for, but they can basically like, those are like their two real big things, like either suspend your membership or basically
lifetime ban kind of thing.
Or that, or like maybe for a couple years, depending on like what the complaint is and what all happened and stuff like that. It's really up to them, and they also don't have to do anything if they don't feel it's necessary. So it really does vary. I haven't seen, like I haven't been a part of one that, we've had to recommend anything punitive to them, but I also don't know how anything in the past has worked as far as what they've done. I don't know the past history on any complaints, but yeah, they can suspend your membership if they choose, or they can kick you out of the association as well if they choose, or do nothing.
Well, that would be interesting, though, is if your team's been working on this case for X amount of time and you recommend to the board that the person get suspended their membership for a year, and the board turns around and said, yeah, no, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to do anything to them. I mean, that's got to be a little bit of point of contention there, I would think. Like, how would that make you feel?
I don't know, because thankfully have not been in that position. But two, I already know going into it that they can very much listen to our suggestions and recommendations, or they don't have to. Like, they have final say in it, 100%. We're the ones that basically do the fact finding for them, and then they take it from there. So if they decide, like if we were like, yeah, we think they should be suspended for the rest of the term of this particular membership, and they're like, no. Okay, well, that's on you guys, because here's what we found. You guys are the ones that have to answer for it if it ever comes up, not me. So it's all good.
Yeah. But how would it ever come up, right? Once you have presented to the board and they've come back with their decision, is that then now part of meeting minutes or documented somewhere?
No.
So someone would never know what actually went on there.
Right. So I believe somebody else can clarify this better than I can as far as what happens after it goes to the board. I know it doesn't get discussed on the meeting. I think it might just be that there was an investigation or there was a complaint and we'll discuss it. I can't remember the terms that they use, but I've heard them, like, they've gone basically off recording and they have like an executive board meeting, like just amongst themselves and discuss. So that's as much as I know. The only way I think it could come up again would be if there was a repeat accusation against the person.
So, and then if a board member is involved in the ethics complaint, they have to recuse themselves.
They don't know about it either until the end.
If you would go to the board with yours and say, hey, so-and-so who's on the board is part of this complaint, so-and-so's got to recuse themselves of making a decision on this particular accusation.
So they do have like a workaround with that. So like Kristen is she's the secretary of IACA. She's my board liaison. So I would go directly to her with our findings, or if I needed like additional time or I needed help talking to somebody, like I would go directly to her. But let's say, for example, the accusation was against her, there's like a workaround her and I go talk to somebody else
on the board.
So like, so like she doesn't know about it.
So I was curious because I was reading up on the bylaws and I didn't see anything like, what if it's the entire board? And so I contacted Christopher Bruce. I said, hey, well, what happens if the entire board's part of an ethics complaint? And I said, is there a designated survivor type person out there? And he said, you, meaning the chair, would have to come up with a plan of how it would get resolved.
Like, how does one person do that? And then who am I supposed to go to?
I was actually really surprised that was not resolved. When we redid the bylaws, I don't know, when would we do that? 5 years ago? I was surprised that actually wasn't worked out.
So I know that they're reworking on the bylaws now again. I'll bring that up to Kristen as something to like maybe address, because I don't know. It's not like they all, come under a cloud of suspicion and then Rhea takes over or whoever is in this position takes over. Like that wasn't listed anywhere. And no, we need to figure something else out. Like, can we get like the rest of the committee heads together or something? Like, there has to be something else. Like, can we have a commission? I don't know.
Yeah,
but no.
I have no idea. So it's
also
interesting.
They just all need to be ethical and make ethical decisions so that does not become an issue.
Yeah, let's not worry about it. Let's just not be unethical, right?
Exactly.
So, all right, let's take one final break. When we come back, I want to play Don't Be That Analyst. So we'll take your calls. This is Analyst Talk with Jason Eller. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Scott Eicher, and I am a retired FBI agent. And I just wanted to point out that FBI agents are people too.
Welcome back. Before the break, Rhea just found out that she's the designated survivor for IACA.
No.
And so she has some thinking to do after this recording.
Absolutely.
I want to take this opportunity to play Don't Be That Analyst. And this is where we take some calls and we talk about silly stuff that we see in maybe our profession or in the office that analysts definitely shouldn't be doing, but are doing. So these aren't by any stretch of the imagination probably ethical violations, but nonetheless, they shouldn't be done. And I guess the one that I've been thinking about is don't be that analyst that posts sensitive information on a forum.
Yes.
Right? You don't want to be handing out social security numbers and date of births and addresses of victims.
Yeah.
You don't want to be putting that in a message board or a listserv or anything like that.
No. Yeah.
Do you have one?
I did. Mine is don't be that analyst that you become the example of what not to do.
There we go. All right. So let's get in some of these. The first caller is David Jimenez. David, what's your don't be that analyst?
Hi, Jason. Don't be that analyst is when asked by management to provide your perspective on a particular issue, just don't provide a copy and paste extract of an article or even a hyperlink for them to read further. Provide context. Provide your view on the issue instead of expecting the consumer to determine what they should read and what their take might be. Give them a bottom line. This is what analysts should be doing.
All right. So that gets into a lot of intelligence there. So it's the idea of getting information and doing more than what's asked of you.
Correct. Yeah, for sure. Like your job as an analyst isn't just to do research. It's to take that information, analyze it, and provide something that's actionable, tactical, and recommendations. So if they're asking, is there a problem over in this area here? You don't come back with, well, we had 5 residential burglaries and 10 vehicle burglaries. Like you have to give more than that, like daytime, nighttime, like what's the analysis of it? So yeah, definitely. It's not just a copy and paste and a link to click on. Like you need to do your analyst responsibilities in your job there for sure.
Yeah. And this gets easier over time. I know that when I was first an analyst, like this is something that was really nerve-wracking.
Oh yeah.
Especially making when you're recommendations. Fresh out of college.
Or you're just emailing like people in your command staff, your chief, your sheriff, whoever it is. Like these aren't people you necessarily have day-to-day contact with. So you're not really sure how they might receive information or not, or like how do they, the context of things. So yeah, I don't know. It can definitely be nerve-wracking, but having that confidence in yourself and your abilities definitely helps.
Let's go on to Sean Fisher. Sean, what's your don't be that analyst?
Don't be that analyst that makes a map that looks like an Easter egg. Too many color palettes, too many line types, and too many labels.
Oh, man. I actually, in terms of the color ranges, once it gets beyond like 5 colors, I usually can't tell the difference. Like once you get into like a red and an orange, I'm colorblind anyway, so I struggle with anything above 5.
Gotcha. It definitely makes it hard to distinguish. So when they have those recommendations of, hey, use this color palette, maybe stick with that color palette and divide your data appropriately so that the colors make sense. But having too many colors where you can't differentiate between black, purple, blue, and green, and that's not going to help anybody.
Let's talk to Paul Arnold. Paul, what is your don't be that analyst?
Don't be that analyst that kills everyone in your organization with death by PowerPoint. Make them fun, make them short, make them enjoyable. Because the worst thing you can do in the world is have to sit through someone else's bad PowerPoint.
It is a skill.
I don't know about the worst thing in the world, but yeah, I mean,
it can be pretty atrocious.
To me, in terms of PowerPoint and recommendation, I think there needs to be a maximum amount of words that can be put on one slide.
Well, isn't it like no more than 6 bullet points, and even that is pushing it?
Yes, and to me, it gets to the point where it can't have more than 30 words on a single PowerPoint. It's just too much there. You're reading a report at that point in time.
Well, that and then the transitions and the animations and this and no. Just go slide to slide, people. Slide to slide. Like you can jazz it up with some colors, some pictures or whatever, but to 30 different transitions to go from one slide to the next. Oh, good Lord, no.
No. And that's where you got to be careful on your color selection as well, because we had one presentation, the guy presented, and I think it was green background with red lettering. And it looked like on the screen, the letters were moving. It was like it created an optical illusion.
Well, you just said you're colorblind, so could you even read it?
Yeah, I could read that. It's pinks and purples that I have the trouble with. So that particular greens, I could make it out, but it was weird because it looked like the words were moving because it created an optical illusion.
Yeah, I like to choose light neutrals, like a light gray as my background, and then come up with something else. I don't know, a dark blue, font or something like that. You can make it more interesting, but you got to make sure people can read it.
That's true.
Moving letters is not a good way to go.
Yes. All right. Let's see what Sally Rawlings has to say. Sally, what's your don't be that analyst?
Hi, Jason. I would say don't be that analyst that uses defaults. And that means the colors in Excel charts, map symbols, even core plus breaks. Because when you see a chart and it's that Excel default blue, we all know that's the default. So customize your colors, your symbols, and your number breaking point so that it makes sense for you.
Yeah, and that's just getting back to the color palette of what works best for you and your audience, really. It's
for sure.
What's going to work best in that situation, where you're presenting, what's your final product. Are you talking about a printout? Because what's the color on the screen versus what gets actually printed out on a piece of paper can look vastly different.
Yeah. Like I had a chief who liked charts and graphs and colors, and the more the better. Like he liked all of that. So it would make it interesting sometimes, but we also just kind of played along with it and just made it work because he was pretty easygoing about it, but it was just like that joke of like, we know charts and graphs, we know colors, we know, we got it. So
Albert Mesa. Albert, what's your don't be that analyst?
Don't be that analyst who makes attempt to identify bulletins for the paranormal. If it looks like a ghost, don't waste your time.
Albert, is that from personal experience? He hung up. I wonder if that one's for personal experience.
I feel like that's almost like a requirement, because you have your detectives that are like, oh, we need this out. What is it? I don't know. It's the suspect. Like, dude, really? Come on. Like, can we just put out like a blanket, like email? Like, can we not have a picture? I mean, seriously, but I'm totally with Albert on that one. It just doesn't do the picture doesn't serve a purpose. Like, you just can't.
All right, let's move on to Steve French. Steve French, what's your don't be that analyst?
Don't be that analyst who has a fixed mindset and feels threatened by change or progression and think that they have nothing to learn. The best analysts I've met and worked with thrive on challenge, change, and the ability to be flexible and adapt to the surroundings that they find themselves in.
Yeah, it gets into not having a bias, right?
Yeah.
And trying to let the data drive you.
Yeah, like I definitely agree with keep learning, and like it doesn't matter if you've been doing this for 20 years, you can still take a basic intro class or a fundamental class and either learn something new or brush up on skills that maybe you're not using as much now. Like you never stop learning, because that's when we get complacent. So I'm definitely in agreement with Steve.
Angela Becker-Hines, what's your don't be that analyst?
Don't be that analyst who replies all to every single email thread. I don't need my inbox flooded with, I don't have anything responses from every person in a request chain.
Definitely guilty of that.
This goes across like all workplaces, right? Yes. I actually think Outlook and all the different email programs should not have the ability to reply all.
Yeah, for some people it would definitely
like
benefit them.
If you're replying to more than 30 people, it should not allow you to do it. At my work, one of the administrators, what she does is she actually blind copies everybody.
Okay.
And so that kind of takes out the whole problem right there. Yeah. So everybody gets blind copied, and then if somebody replies all, it's just to her.
Right.
And so it works out really well. The problem with that is then you don't know who received this message. So then you might be forwarding it to people. Might create a whole other problem, but it's usually she puts who's all on this in the body of the email. So we really haven't had a problem with that. So
well, that's good. We at a previous agency I worked at, and I'm not going to name it, they would send out like department-wide emails or whatever. So-and-so had a baby or whatever. They would reply back, thanks to okay. Like you could, no. And it was like, it wasn't just like one or two times. It would be like all the time. And it was just like, can we make that not the automatic setting for that person, please? Like you all realize that like reply or just not.
You know, what's almost worse than that is when somebody turns around and replies all and then tells them not to reply all.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah. That's almost worse than just replying all. The fact that you turned around and then said, don't hit reply all, but you just hit reply all.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like email is not a complicated thing, but there are definitely people who make it really, really difficult. 100%.
All right, let's go on to Matt Smith. Matt Smith, you're our next caller. What's your don't be that analyst?
Don't be that analyst that has link charts that look like a ball of yarn that my cat plays with. Keep your connections from crossing and your links from overlapping. Don't make it a mess.
I gotcha. So
Yeah.
Are you the type of person that never crosses the line in a link chart?
That's what I was taught. When I went to the academy, that's how I was taught. You do not cross lines. So I thought that was how it was supposed to be. And then as the years have gone on, I've seen people cross lines and I'm like, but I thought we weren't supposed to. So I don't know, like, I didn't know if it was like industry standard or if it was the FDLE way of doing things, but I don't cross lines because I was told that's a no-no. So
I think it's one of those things, it's good in theory, but then in practice, you'd be like, well, geez, I'm going to have to loop this line all the way around the outside, bring it all the way across and out, come back through the back door kind of thing in order to get it there. Or I could just cross this one line.
And I have completely redone link associations so that a line wouldn't cross. And I'm like, this is so stupid, but that's how I learned it. And I don't want to deviate from that because I don't like, and it's just, that's how I am. But yeah, the whole line thing, it can be annoying.
Yeah. And I think too, it's depends on your purpose and audience, right? If we're huddled up around a desk there and we've printed out a link chart and it's got a couple of lines overlapping here and there, well, you're looking at it really closely because you're all huddled up.
Right.
Whereas if you're presenting this in either at trial or during a press conference or something like that, where it needs to be more of a high level view, then definitely you're not crossing the lines.
Yeah.
And it should be able to be read by farther away.
Yes, no, for sure. And thankfully mine haven't gone to court or anything like that. They've just kind of stayed within. So I'm happy with that. But because I was taught you don't cross lines, you don't cross lines. And that's how it is. But at least I know that it would be easy to expand it, make it bigger, whatever it is. So it just sucks if you have to add any new people to it.
It can get complex real quick.
Oh, yes, it can.
All right. And last but certainly not least, Christopher Bruce. Christopher, what's your don't be that analyst?
Well, look, I know you really love Microsoft Excel and you love your Excel workbook, but don't be that analyst who limits themselves to a flat file application when the data that we work with in crime analysis is inherently relational. You need to have a solid understanding of how relational databases work and to ask questions about data that's in a relational format if you're going to be able to get the most out of the data that you're collecting on a regular basis. Learn relational database programs like Access or any other one that you can find and use Excel for its strengths, which are in statistics and charting. But don't be that analyst that tries to do all of their data management in a spreadsheet.
Yeah, I can't even imagine doing it now in this day and age with the millions of records that you get access to. And I would encourage analysts actually to learn SQL and to get in behind the scenes to their RMS, because there's most likely going to be data behind the scenes of an RMS, behind the curtain, so to speak, that isn't going to be available in the front end. Yeah,
for sure. I didn't really take advantage of learning Access pretty much my entire career. So I'm slowly working into that now in the last 6-7 months of how to use it and leverage it. And because I've always had like a really good dedicated RMS, and I understand that, maybe things in the background, but I was always able to get the data I needed. So I didn't ever run into that problem, but now I'm at an agency that doesn't have a dedicated RMS and you use different systems and different ways. So SQL reports and all these things, yes, Access is definitely helpful.
All right. Well, very good, Rhea. The last segment we have is Words to the World. This is where I leave the guest with the final word. You can promote any idea that you want, but Rhea, what are your words to the world?
Take pride in your work. Learn your skill set to the best of your abilities and make it work for you. I see it so much where some people, it just doesn't matter. But when you see somebody who really enjoys what they do and takes care in what they do, it just makes such a big difference in how they present themselves, how they present their products. So if you're not somebody who has a lot of confidence right now, reach out to a neighboring agency, reach out to IACA, IACA, your state association, and see about finding a mentor, because we can always grow, we can always improve, and we can always be better at what we do. So have that pride in yourself and confidence.
Well, I leave every guest with, you've given me just enough to talk bad about you later. But I do appreciate you being on the show, Rhea. Thank you so much, and you be safe.
You too, Jason. Thank you so much. This was a really great experience for me, so I really appreciate it, and I had a great time.
Thank you for joining us today on Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. We hope you not only enjoyed the show, but also learned something new. For more information on our guests and information relating to today's topic, please visit our website at leapodcast.com. Special thanks to the Rough and Tumble for our theme song. For more of their music, you can visit their website at theroughandtumble.com. Also thanks to Kyle McMullen for our show logo. For more of his design, please visit his website at moderntype.com. The show is hosted, recorded, and edited by Jason Elder and written by me, Mindy. You can contact us both via the LEA Podcast website. Please join us again next time as we interview another expert in this great field.